aware that we all have a sort of multiple personality disorder? Well, stay tuned to this video and we'll talk about how that might be so. Hi, my name is Michael Doyle. Welcome to the channel. In an earlier video, I talked about how I had been previously associated for a couple of years with a body of work known as psychosynthesis, which was developed by an Italian psychiatrist, Dr. Roberto Assagioli, back in the early 1900s. A major component of that work is the identification and study of the fact that we are not just one personality, that we are actually made up of a couple of dozen different personalities, and that each of these sub-personalities, as they are called, function on their own in the sense that they all have their own wants and needs. Many times they work together, but they're also often in conflict with each other. And the work of psychosynthesis is to synthesize them and bring them together so that they work in harmony and help us to live a more fulfilling, peaceful, successful life. Through that work, I discovered the work of Doctors Hal and Sidra Stone and their voice dialogue work. They took that concept of subpersonalities and developed strategies to work with these various subpersonalities over and above what psychosynthesis offered. And through their work, they discovered one particular subpersonality that they claim deserves superstar billing. And the reason it does is because of how it affects our self-image, it affects our self-esteem, and it has the ability to do more damage to us than any of the other sub-personalities. I learned a lot about it over the years through reading and absorbing their book, Embracing Your Inner Critic. And I'll put a link to that in the description below, as well as a link to psychosynthesis. This inner critic was born at a very early age, just like all of the other subpersonalities were. And they were born as a survival strategy to assist us in getting our needs met and becoming more of the people that we thought that we should become. Because it's so early and its voice has been so consistent throughout our lives, many of us aren't even aware that it is there and that it's functioning constantly. All we may know is that we don't feel very good, we may feel depressed, we may have a lack of self-esteem, we may fear failure, not want to go ahead and try anything. We aren't aware that there's a connection between those feelings and a voice inside of our head that's constantly criticizing us, that's constantly attacking us through critic attacks. That voice is a combination of introjected voices that we've picked up along the way from our parents, our major caregivers, society, as to how we should be. Just like all of the other subpersonalities, it's actually trying to do something good for us. And I'll talk about what that is a little further on. But its way of going about doing it is often the same way that a parent who wants the best for us is trying to motivate us through their various criticism without being aware of the damage that it's doing to our self-esteem and our self-image. Now, the thing about the inner critic and all other subpersonalities as well, but keeping in mind that this one deserves superstar billing, is that as it goes unchecked, it gets stronger and stronger and in many ways takes over a lot of our personality. And again, we're not aware of it. It just feels like such a natural part of us that we don't even question it. We just think this is us. This is normal for us. The thing about the inner critic is it just doesn't know when to stop. It can grow so strong in its desire to motivate us that it is downright abusive in the things that it says to us. You're so stupid. Look at you. You're so fat and you're so ugly. There's an acquaintance that I have that she's such a beautiful woman, but she had this haircut that I never matched up to her face. And as I got to know her, she explained to me that the reason she had this haircut was because it was so easy to take care of, and she would never have to look herself in the mirror because she hated what she saw in the mirror. And she was a beautiful woman, is a beautiful woman. And that's because I knew right away it's because her inner critic is constantly picking on her. Look at you, you're not perfect. And perfection is a big deal with inner critics. Inner critics want us to live up to certain standards and certain expectations, and being perfect and not making mistakes, especially not making mistakes, is extremely important to our inner critics. Before we even get started on things, it will start in on us. And the thing about inner critics is because it's so strong and it has sort of recruited other parts of us like shame and depression, that it brings others with it, and it tremendously affects our psyche. Now I know it kind of sounds like we're powerless, right? It's got hold of us, and what can we possibly do about it? Well, there is good news. You might think, well, I really want, now that I'm aware that there is this inner critic, and yes, I can see how it has drastically affected my life, that I really want to get rid of it. And you know what? The truth is, no, you don't. It is your friend. It's just using the wrong strategy to get what it is that you need. And once you see it for what it is, and you learn not to play its game, not to play the critic game, then it will support you and help you, just like all of the other sub-personalities do. I was inspired to do this video because my inner critic has been all over me lately, and this will give you an example of how relentless it is and how it's never satisfied. You can never satisfy the inner critic. It doesn't matter how much you do, how far you go, it will use that as the new starting point to just pick right up and continue bashing you with its critic attacks. So here's how it's been coming up for me lately. I have just dropped 24 pounds over the last couple of months, and I've done it without any exercise, without any special diet. It's just, I've used the law of attraction, and my goal is 30 pounds, and once I get there, I'm going to do a whole video on that. Of course, being the 24 pounds heavier than what I was, my inner critic was constantly berating me about, why are you eating that? Don't you know how much weight you're going to gain? And are you so weak that you can't stop yourself from eating that kind of stuff? And what are you doing now? Why do you want to go to that restaurant? Don't you know that this goes totally against what you want for you? Constant berating like that, right? So I decided, and I'd done this many years ago, I decided I wanted to drop 30 pounds and look as good as I could while doing these videos. You would think that after dropping 24 pounds, my critic would be satisfied and it would say things to me like, great job, you've done a fabulous job, you've lost so much weight, you look really good, we only have a short time. You would think that it would be the voice of encouragement, but no, that's not how the inner critic works. It has been on me like you wouldn't believe, just for any time I eat, I bought a bag of popcorn to treat myself. It's been Christmas, New Year's, and my birthday, all within a short period of time. So, of course, I've had little wee things along the way on top of just my reduced intake of food. And you would think, and this is one of my favorite sayings from the Embracing Your Inner Critic book, and that is, you would think that I committed a crime against humanity whenever I would take a Ferrero Rocher chocolate and put it into my mouth. But that's just the nature of the inner critic. And you need to understand, it's trying to do something good for you. So what might that be? Well, I'm going to challenge you to do something right now. I'm going to challenge you to turn the video off and to go to your journal or grab a pen and a piece of paper and answer the question. If you've got an inner critic, and chances are you do, what good do you think that your inner critic is trying to do for you? And then come back when you're done and we'll talk about it. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you did that. Think about it. If you have a parent who has been critical of you in your childhood, did that mean that they didn't love you? Were they intentionally trying to hurt you? Did they not have your best interests at heart? Were they intentionally trying to abuse you and create a low self-esteem and self-image of yourself and demotivate you from trying anything? No, of course not. They were just unaware of what they were doing, unaware of the impact that it would have, and likely because that's the way they were talked to. So after studying this work and really getting into it, I got to understand, what was it that they were trying to do? What good were they trying to create? Well, again, I had another friend that I did some counseling work with him, and he came to one of my workshops, and we got to explore this. And his father was extremely successful, and he was the only child. And his father was a completely, totally abusive tyrant to him. And he beat the self-esteem and the self-image out of this boy like you wouldn't believe when he told me these stories. But he knew that the only reason his father did that was because his father wanted him to succeed, wanted him to be the best version of himself that he could be, wanted him to take charge and become the man that the father thought that he should be. But he used motivation, the wrong motivation. For me, and I know this is true of a lot of people, and the Stones discuss this in their book, the good that my inner critic was and is trying to do for me is to prevent me from being criticized and rejected by people outside of me. So think about it. If I've already dropped 24 pounds, why would the critic berate me into not eating anything that is unnecessary? It's trying to prevent me from gaining weight so that other people will judge me. And if they judge me enough and think I'm repulsive enough, which is another favorite word that the inner critic likes to use when attacking us, how repulsive you are, that you're so weak that you can't avoid putting this thing in your mouth. It's trying to protect us, me, from the criticism and ultimate rejection that always came when I was a kid, right? You never do anything right. You always seem to mess things up. And again, why would a parent say that to a kid? because they want the kid to be better. Because children are a reflection of their parents, and parents don't want their kids to go out and have people outside criticize them and reject them and have that be a reflection of them. So they use the completely wrong motivation. But hopefully that's the answer that you got, was that what your inner critic is trying to do is to prevent the outside world, people outside of you, from criticizing you and ultimately rejecting you once they discover what a repulsive, disgusting, weak person that you are. I know that sounds harsh, but that's just normal inner critic languaging and normal inner critic attacks. So now that you're aware of this, how do you make it your friend? How do you work with it? Well, the first thing is you don't go at war with it, because you will not win. When you were a kid and you talked back to your parents whenever they criticized you, did you win? No, because they're much bigger, they've got more strategies, they've been around longer, and the same thing with the inner critic. It's been around a whole lot longer than your conscious adult brain has, and so it knows how to use all your weaknesses against you and to win. Oh yeah? And in fact, it fuels it. Oh yeah? You think you're going to beat me? Well, and it will just pour on the tirades of criticism and attacks, and you weakling, you think that you can beat me. So you don't want to go there. That's not the way you want to go. What you want to do, first of all, is you have to become aware of it, right? As I said, most people are unaware that the inner critic is running their lives. You have to become aware of it. And there are many different ways of doing it. One is just watching a video like this. Two is looking online. There are now many books written with the title of Inner Critic in it, and especially Embracing Your Inner Critic by the Stones. And you begin to identify it and begin to notice when it's talking and what it's saying to you. And not be afraid of hearing its voice, because as soon as you begin to identify it and you write down what it's saying on paper, you detach from that, you disown it, and you say, whoa, wait a minute, this is not me. You begin to objectively look at it and going, well, this isn't true. I am not the repulsive, disgusting, weak example of a human being that this inner critic is trying to make me out to be. And so you get some objectivity with it. And then once you understand what the inner critic is trying to do, you can, with your, as the Stones call it, your aware ego, or in parent-child type languaging, you develop your adult and relate to the inner critic from the accountable adult point of view. When my inner critic comes up and it's trying to judge me for having a little extra bit of something like a Ferrero Rocher chocolate, I simply acknowledge it and I go, thank you, inner critic. I appreciate what you're trying to do. You only want what's best for me. I understand that you're trying to protect me from being criticized and judged by people outside of me and rejected by them. And I appreciate that. However, I've got this, okay? We've just dropped 24 pounds. They weren't really criticizing that much before, and if they were, I didn't know anything about it. They weren't rejecting me because I was 24 pounds heavier. So don't worry, I've got this. Thank you very much for speaking up and looking after my best interests. It will never go away. It will always be there and use your weakest moments to criticize you. But the more you become aware of it, the less it will run you and prevent you from stepping out and taking risks and enjoying yourself and feeling better about yourself, because you are now in charge of it. It is not in charge of you. So I hope that you got some value out of this video. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing to the channel, and if you do, hit the notification bell so you're notified of when I post new videos. And I thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.